Okay, so I think we are rocking and rolling. So if you're looking at my face and listening to my voice right now, it's likely because you are my guest's viewer. You know, you are a fan of his content and you are a fan of Bitcoin. So you're looking at me and going, who's this guy and why am I listening to you? So my name is Ben Schmidt, and I have been a Bitcoin junkie for the better part of 5 years now. A little bit about myself. When I was a kid, when I was 14, I came across Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and I was, I was always wanting to be make a big splash in real estate, and Robert Kiyosaki was kind of the messaging that I came across when I was 14. And when I was 14, he introduced the concept of fiat, money by decree. And so at a young age, I was aware of holding hard assets versus a dying currency. So setting out into the world of real estate, that was always ingrained in my subconscious. So when I did come across Bitcoin, it made a lot of sense. But ultimately, going through university and after university, got into the world of real estate and had property. So I purchased a lot of university rental properties, and because that's where I kind of started my journey, and grew that into what I would call my little small pile of dirt. It's my little empire, and it grew fairly successfully. We had a number of properties, and we had a construction team. We were a full 360-degree real estate office. Because I also sold, when you bought or sold or managed or rent out, you didn't need to worry about it. We could handle it. So anyway, when a few years back during the cervasis thickness in Canada, we had froze bank accounts. And for me, that was a wake-up call. It was something I was never expecting. And left turn here in the intro, but it was a left turn in my life and everyone's life. And that's how I came across Bitcoin. I had just read the book by Ray Dalio about the rise and fall of nations. I forget the title, and I was depressed. I had read about the problem, and the next book I picked up was the solution. It was it was Saifedean Ammous's The Bitcoin Standard. And so for me, it was very enlightening. And so I was here for freedom money. And so when I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I identified the three most asymmetric things right now is to learn about Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, and then network with Bitcoiners. So a few years ago or last year, I was at the Strategy World Conference, and I realized this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. This is the industry I want to be in. And so I made the decision that I was going to sell my real estate and fully go into the Bitcoin space. So that took most of last year. And in that process, I was involved with the Canadian Bitcoin Conference. The Canadian Bitcoin Conference is it's three years. We're going into our fourth year, and incredibly successful. A number of names, including Lawrence Lepard, who I got to very fortunately interview last year alongside Mason Ford and Jeff Walton. The Canadian Bitcoin Conference had reached out and was interested about adding a third day, industry day, corporate adoption, the digital capital thesis. They knew that I had made some connections in that world by networking, going to as many conferences as I had. And so we built and worked towards this industry day. Now, I won't go too far down that path, but that's something for a topic of conversation tomorrow, in fact. But in leading up to this event, we had a number of key thought leaders in the space of digital capital. And now, while he was not going to be present, we were very unfortunately not able to have today's guest that was going to line up for the conference. But I'm very excited to have him as my first guest. I had him underlined as the individual that I wanted to kick off the show with. So I'm really quite fortunate to have our guest today, and none other than the Bitcoin wizard himself, Adam Livingston.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me. And really, I appreciate you using the nickname. You titled it the Bitcoin Wizard. You're just rolling with it. I love it because I didn't wait for the Bitcoin Maxi Puritans to bestow me the Bitcoin Wizard. I labeled myself that, and now I have buy-in. So thank you dearly for going with it. But thank you for having me, sir.
No problem. Thank you for joining. And no, you're leaning in the Bitcoin Wizard. It makes a lot of sense. When I first came across you, because just like you were just you're just a guy on the internet, right? And I think it was like 2,000 or 3,000 people, kind of almost where I am right now. And I was seeing your posts, and they were catchy. They had imagery, and they were very esoteric, and they're big and grandiose.
You can say schizo and insane. It's fine. I'll take the compliment.
Well, I was like, I think I like the cut of this guy's jib. I was like, at first, I was like, I'm not even sure where this guy's coming from. Is this a good guy? Is this, but I reached out to you a few times and touched base. And, one message I said, hey, I'm going to the Bitcoin Vegas conference. Are you going? And you said you were. I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll try to bump into each other. And so this was Vegas last year. And when I had first got there, actually the first person I bumped into was Joe Consorti. He was looking around, and I was just getting there looking around, and I see him, and he needs a place to put his bags. So we put his bags in my room. We're heading to the pool. We're waiting. And then we get a message, or he gets a message like, Saylor's talking right now. We're like, oh my God. So like we ran over, and we unfortunately just missed his proof of reserves kind of spiel, if you remember that question and that long answer. So that's set and setting as to when I met you. So we got there, and it had just ended, and the room had kind of mostly cleared from, Saylor and the like, but the participants were there, and that's when I saw you, bumped up to you, and got to chat with you. And it was very, enlightening to see you and meet with you and go, no, this guy's for real. This is who he is. This is how he thinks. This is how he talks. And this is how he approaches Bitcoin. So anyway, just I appreciate very much kind of being here, but I appreciated how open you were for people to kind of approach you and talk to you.
Yeah, man, of course. I just love being around like-minded individuals. I have a really fond memory of, we watched Saylor's speech together at
Yes, we did.
Bitcoin Vegas. And I remember when he said the line, and, I didn't really know you at all, but we were having some good conversation. And Saylor had his classic quote of something about basking in the warm glow of cyberlight or something. And just a beautiful poetic type, Saylor on LSD type quote that he does. And then I remember we just both looked at each other and just like, man, this guy is on another level. So it was cool to run into another Saylorian Bitcoiner, as we call him, because, the community split right now. We got to stick together, but it was awesome meeting you there, and we had a good time.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. And it's funny. I was going to bring up his speech a little later to tie into something, but yeah, I was just in the sea of crowd, and I look over, and there you are. And so we got to watch that together. So, back to kind of the wizard, and I kind of want to talk to you about the content that you produce and the messaging that you have and the cadence and the frequency and the imagery and everything that you do. And I met you, and it seemed legit, and this is who you are. But when you get into the podcasting world or the content creation world, you're kind of thinking my not my shtick, but my approach, my energy, all of those things. So the Bitcoin Wizard is this you? Is this like the incarnation of you, who you always wanted to be? How did you see the wizard before the wizard poof was here?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really reflected on it too much. It's definitely me for sure. The enthusiasm is real. I love Bitcoin. I think about it literally all day. I wake up thinking about Bitcoin, check the price, and then I go to bed thinking about Bitcoin. It has totally consumed my life. I'm as orange pilled as they come, I feel like. So I have a deep love for the asset, obviously. That is not being faked at all. I want nothing more than Bitcoin to succeed, and I view my mission as helping that with, my own definition of how Bitcoin succeeds, which we'll get into. But yeah, the Bitcoin Wizard, man, I thought to myself, this is the most exciting story in the world. Obviously, I've been a Bitcoiner for a long time and had been listening to Bitcoin podcasts for a long time. And once I came across the True North guys, I just loved their content, but it was only Wednesday night podcast, it would like be on at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night Central Time. So I just thought this story is too exciting for people to talk about it once per week on a 10 p.m. podcast. So I thought, maybe I should start making content. And I started a next account, and it seemed to be picking up some traction. So I just thought maybe I make a YouTube video. And I thought, if I'm going to be a content creator, I might as well have some fun with it. Like, I might as well ham it up a bit with some performance art, be a bit of a character. It is me, but obviously you got to make it exciting and stuff. So I would say that the guy that you see on YouTube is 95% me, and then that extra 5% is my performance art I'm putting on top of it. So yeah, it's the same sense of humor. That's me, the real guy, but you got to give that extra oomph once you're recording. And I don't really overthink it, honestly. I'm going to give myself a ridiculous name, and I think that if people like it, they like it. I just want to have fun while making the content, and hopefully that radiates to the audience. So I really didn't think things through. I just thought, I'm going to press record and have some fun. Hopefully it works.
Well, that kind of comes through, except for the pace and the cadence and the frequency and the amount and the detail, and it's video, it's image, it's text, it's X post, like it's it's a lot. And so for someone who just pressed play on the very first recording a few minutes ago, and I'm, thinking about structure and planning, and now I'm a planner, and you're coming out every single day. So with a video on Bitcoin, I think based from when you started, you're over a video a day. We need a metric for you, right? Video per day,
true.
right?
Plus like 80 or so videos for Swan on the Swan channel. I think I've done 600 or so in a little over a year. So yeah, I drink the Kool-Aid. Let's just put it that way.
So then I guess my question I kind of lead into then is AI, because a lot of your posts, people kind of look at and they go, this guy's unreal, right? And they go, well, how real is he? Is this all AI? So my first question, are you tech? Are you AI?
I'm actually a human, unfortunately.
Okay.
There is no Terminator Skynet creation and strategies basements or anything like that going on. This is a genuine human in the flesh. So no AI here.
All right. Well, I was going to make a joke about asking about your seed phrase at one point to see if you were getting some sort of a phishing attack. I was like, that's not a good idea. That won't go well. So, staying with AI and kind of content creation, I've got a friend, he wrote a book, and I know, he used AI for sure. And it's all of his thoughts and his ideas, but I've seen what, a prompt is, and then it comes out. And, I go, what kind of value do I put on content that's created from AI? And recently I've had a number of projects kind of on the go, and I had a friend say, I was telling him, I got to do this, got to do that. And he's like, you need AI. You need AI. Okay, I'm gonna do the AI. I've been doing ChatGPT, etc. But so in terms of using AI to kind of create the content or structure the content and plan the content, I'm curious about how you approach and think about making sure your message is yours, and how do you go about using AI in terms of structuring, planning, producing, and or information.
Ooh, Ben, unfortunately, I think we're broken up here. I'm losing you.
Okay. We are back. Of course, on my very first episode, I lose power. I think were you live? Were you talking? Were you still on?
No. So unfortunately, it cut out entirely. So it was neither of us. It was just a gray screen, but yeah. Ben's power went out, everybody, but we're back.
We are back. I just did renovations on my property. I just moved in. I'm not an electrician. I'm all worried right now that I've got too much power on an outlet or something like that. So if it happens again, truly apologize. I think we're just going to roll with it. It was just a random blip. And if not, hey, but you know what? Nothing better could have happened, because it just kind of puts everything in perspective and whatever, right? So tech can't control it all the time, right? So to get back into where we were with AI. So I think, where I was ending all of this was, how do you approach AI with creating content, producing and scheduling, as well as making sure your message is still you?
Yeah, it's tough to balance because AI is definitely a force multiplier. If you want to get something done and you want to get it done quickly, AI can really help with that. But at the same time, you don't want to lose the human touch that you put on content. And obviously, that can differ whether it's through text or whether it's through video. Depending on the medium of art that you're making, I'll call it art because I do have that left side brain to me, where I do like to be theatrical and stuff. It's tough to lose that when you're using AI, but I do use it as a force multiplier. Specifically, I have a very hyperactive imagination, so I think a lot of people, they have this idea that like AI like does everything for you, and that's just not the way that it works. Specifically, when I was making content a year ago, when I was getting started, I got a lot of complaints about AI, and then I'm just like, okay, well then you put on this pace that I am, and then we'll see if you can do it. You can't. So, those complaints are really by the wayside now. And honestly, when it comes to my video content, I really don't use too many AI notes either. It's really a lot of the time I just roll out of bed and hit record, and it's just me talking now. So, it depends. I think that honestly, I have a hyperactive imagination, so literally throughout all the day, I have ideas for X posts and articles that I want to put out, and I keep track with my notes app on my phone. I'm just like, hey, this one would be a great article. This would be a great X post. And then I'll have a collection of ideas by the time I get to my desk the next morning, where I'm like, okay, I do want to stagger my posts so I'm not overloading people's timelines. I'm not doing like 8 posts per hour, but I might do like a couple every hour, or maybe a few every few hours. So sometimes when inspiration doesn't strike, which is rare for me, but sometimes when it does, I will prompt AI for post ideas. Maybe, use it as a news aggregator to get inspiration. But yeah, overall, it's like a force multiplier. I use it to make my YouTube thumbnails. I use it to write the stuff that's like busy work to me. Like, I don't want to sit and wait to write out a YouTube video description. I would rather have AI just handle that. So I guard my time really well. But I do like video renderings and graphs that I like to use AI for, because like, why would I code that out by hand with Python? It just doesn't make sense. Like, there's certain things that AI speeds up dramatically, and I really go all in on those things because, it's the force multiplier. I get the Pareto principle from it. It's, what is it? Like the 80% of the value from 20% of the input or whatever. So yeah, that's the way I approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. So force multiplying, like, again, my buddy said, like, you got to do AI. And so I'm working with it, and I don't know if I'm not prompting it right, but it is, I'm slower. I'm angrier. I'm making decisions and then finding out it was not telling me the right thing about products that I asked it to like research into. So could you just bring me quickly back to like your beginnings with AI and how you worked with it? And
yeah,
I heard you say Python and coding. So it does sound like maybe you had a bit of a leg up with some kind of like background knowledge.
Not at all. Zero.
Oh, okay. All right. So, when did you start with AI, and how did you get so used to working with it, where I'm, maybe 3 weeks into it and I'm ready to, I haven't made any progress.
Yeah. It was kind of like, it's a couple things. So I used ChatGPT as soon as it came out, back when it was like so in its infancy that it would write like a crappy little poem for you and you'd be amazed. It was like when the LLMs could start to form pretty elementary sentences together. Like, that's when I was first using it, like ChatGPT 3, when that got released. So I was at least amazed by the technology when it was made mass available to everybody. And then the models developed to the point where I think it was around April of last year when I really saw the writing on the wall with AI. And I thought, I want to be able to have a career where I can be using this all the time. And so I kind of quit my job and threw myself headfirst into it, because I thought, I'm not going to get ahead in society when there are people who are using this technology properly. So last year I kind of threw myself in. And I think that you're highlighting something very important is like, back then, as you're developing a very specific workflow with artificial intelligence tools, you're always constantly asking a question of optimization. Am I like actually using it the best possible way that I can? And the advances in the technology are so quick that you're constantly asking that question. And right now, if you're paying attention to the headlines, there's new tools popping up every single day, and the competition is crazy, and it's moving too fast. So I had an identical workflow for my content for a year straight, actually almost identical up until this last month, where I like sat down and kind of started changing things up again because it was moving so quickly where I thought, man, I can't like even catch up because number one, I want to keep making content every day. I like posting my articles and my YouTube videos. I didn't give myself any time to slow down and think, what's this with AI agents and these other workflows that are coming out? So yeah, it's been a long journey of asking that question of, when is it necessary to take a whole step back and try to do some studying and research as what do I want to get done and how can I apply the best possible tools right now to help me with that workflow that I'm perceiving in my head as optimal. So it's a journey that I'm constantly fighting every day. Like I'm sure that I'm not using it the best that I can, but yeah, we're trying, man. That's a bit of the journey for me.
I'm trying to treat it as the employee, right? And okay, I'm training, and there's days I wake up, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing. I asked it to do something, and it just did it, and I did nothing. I just went and washed a dish and came back, and here it was. And then it just won't do what I've instructed it to do a number of times. And I won't lie, I was a bad employer. I've been mean to the AI. I don't think I've treated it super nicely at all times.
Maybe that's what it is, man.
Saylor talked about, like you get mad at the AI. Well, I have gotten mad at my AI so far. So transitioning AI it's still an AI question because one of the main reasons that I didn't get into AI as early as I have is security, right? Like I've always been a very secure kind of individual. One of the main reasons why Bitcoin was so appealing to me is the security of the network and the fact that I was a bearer asset. I was in charge. So it was my security, absolute responsibility. It's what kind of drew me to Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as you know, the self-custody world, the sovereign world, we recently had the largest attack in self-custody history, the largest drain of Bitcoin. I haven't checked it recently. It was over 2,000. Do you know where we are with the amount of? I'm not sure.
I think the latest dollar value was at least 110 million. And given the lack of volatility in Bitcoin's price, you can do the division problem. But I saw a dollar amount of 110 million. So it's pretty crazy.
Right. It's pretty crazy. And, again, I got into Bitcoin, the self-custody, the freedom. That was kind of what I was here for, right? And I personally did have a Coldcard, and I was okay because of the way I had things set up. And actually, it was thanks to the Bitcoin Way, who I believe is actually a new sponsor of yours. And they saved my butt, right? And so people like the Bitcoin Way and the BTC sessions, the Bitcoin Mentor, and all the many people in the space that have like tirelessly provided education and help and getting people through this, commend everybody. So where am I going with all of this? Like, I had to rethink everything. I moved all of my UTXOs, and I had to help a number of people that I helped see the orange light because they adopted kind of the system I set up. And pretty much every one of them more or less said, I haven't thought about this since we set it up. And I'm like, am I doing these people a service, putting, people in self-custody? And I looked at self-custody as zero counterparty risk. It was the reason why I was secure. No one told me I had to do 100 dice rolls. Like, that was optional, not mandatory, right? No one said that multi-signature was mandatory or passphrases were mandatory, right? Like, if it was that secure, that wallet was considered to be the most secure wallet. And the average Joe was sold, hey, if you see Bitcoin, or when you see Bitcoin and you know fiat's failed, you're just supposed to be able to buy Bitcoin, put it in self-custody, and walk away. And we found out that no, you need to be quote unquote fairly active on your custody, on your situation, right? And that's not what we sold people. You know, that was kind of told that, you know, set it and forget it. So my question to you is just like, how are you reapproaching custody? And sorry, first, how did you look at custody previously? And how do you kind of look at custody moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. And pretty crazy what's happened. Seriously, prayers go out to everybody that lost their life savings. I got into Bitcoin for a similar reason, for the freedom of it. I was pre-orange pilled by Ron Paul, who was running for president in 2012. I was in high school, and he like pre-orange pilled me on the Federal Reserve, money printing, central banking. And so I found Bitcoin in 2012. That was when I first bought it. But yeah, like, so I got into it for the freedom as well, 100%. But my political views have evolved since then. Like, I no longer subscribe, and the maxis will hate me for this, and this surprises nobody, but I'm no longer this anarcho-capitalist who believes that we're going to live in a libertarian utopia where everybody transacts in freedom money. As much as I would love that, that's just, I don't think, a pragmatic way that we need to approach Bitcoin. I think that we should improve people's lives other ways. But that definitely has informed how I view custody of Bitcoin. Regardless, I still am a huge believer in self-custody. And I think that you see a lot of emotional reaction in the Bitcoin community where they immediately throw the baby out with the bathwater. You see the pendulum just swing entirely the other way, where you have some Bitcoiners saying, now give all your keys to Larry Fink. This is the safe way to do it. Immediately transfer everything over to ETFs. And, you know, to me, I still subscribe to the idea that I love my Bitcoin in self-custody, specifically because I believe that I don't like the counterparty risk. If I can't outperform Bitcoin, you know, when it comes to like a fiat denominated return investing basis, I'm not going to give my money to BlackRock to accept that counterparty risk. I still trust myself. And I think that because of the emotions in the community, it was a very emotional time. It still is, obviously, which, you know, good reason. But you had a lot of Bitcoiners take advantage of that with the narrative of, you know, big Bitcoin ETFs are the way to go. And I just don't quite like the ETFs. I don't think I ever will, honestly. It is a better solution for some people. I'm not going to lie. I think that there's nuance in the situation where if you've walked into a McDonald's and you've seen somebody who's mentally impaired being unable to operate a self-order kiosk, you know, asking them to self-custody their Bitcoin is probably not the best idea. So I don't think self-custody is for everybody, but I love it personally. And I think that we had a lot of Bitcoiners who fell into that trap of trusting and not verifying, as unfortunate as that is. If you don't have the technical expertise to verify, you know, the software of these hardware wallets that are being run, and are there bugs? Do you have the capability to trust that manufacturer? There's a lot of things that you need to accept in terms of the risks with self-custody. You never get rid of risk. It's kind of omnipresent. But the way I think about it, to tie up my answer, is that, you know, you're pretty likely to die while driving safely on the road because you are introducing risks from other people who are not driving safely. A lot more likely than you are to lose your Bitcoin because of a software bug that went unanswered for 5 years. This is the first big self-custody heist, if you will, in Bitcoin's history. And we've seen huge issues with counterparty risk, whether it's Mt. Gox, et cetera. So if you want to talk about it on a statistical risk basis, I'll still make the argument for self-custody every single day. So, yep, I'm still holding my Bitcoin with zero counterparty risk, with my riskless capital and my Bitcoin as savings. So that's how I view the whole situation.
You know, once again, we're pretty aligned. That's my circular journey with the process. That's my personal. Again, I've involved a lot of individuals, family members, friends, etc. And so I now need to set them on their path. And so they need to decide, is Bitcoin in self-custody? Is Bitcoin in a multi-custody or a collaborative custody, or is Bitcoin in an ETF? Is that all Bitcoin? Is that one in the same? We understand that it's not, you're not interacting on the protocol as your own individual in those other situations, so to speak. But yeah, so you kind of touched it a little bit when you talked about Bitcoin savings at the end, in line with how you kind of look at custody and percentages, et cetera. And it sounds like, you're a self-custody maxi. If you can't outperform Bitcoin, I heard you say, then you're not interested in a fiat wrapped product. So
Correct.
Those products, I'm thinking of the digital equities. I'm also thinking of digital credit, which no one thinks is going to outperform Bitcoin, but those being kind of like, in the ETFs, the fiat product. So, not financial advice. I didn't give that disclaimer yet. I think anybody watching this so far,
it's financial entertainment. They know
it's financial entertainment. But how have you, when Bitcoin got introduced to your world and it's perfect money, and why do you need anything else other than perfect money? How have you looked at Bitcoin in terms of, investing, saving? What other buckets? It sounds like, MSTR and the like, you're willing to own that, with not asking percentages and what's your breakdown, but just your approach. Sure. I've always said having multiple chess pieces, you're protecting your king. And yeah, you'd think you'd always want a queen. This isn't a perfect analogy, because if you had a whole team of queens, that would probably be best. But the idea of having Bitcoin in a different product available to you. For instance, in Canada, we can have tax-free savings accounts, but we can't self-custody actual Bitcoin. Like, we can't have Bitcoin. We can have an ETF, or we can have the equity. So yeah, long-winded question, just to say, how do you kind of look at investing with a Bitcoin lens?
That's a great question, because obviously my philosophy has evolved over time. I view Bitcoin as savings because when I look at the self-custody aspect of it, it being a decentralized network, it being permissionless, the idea of me being responsible for my finite life energy, I can't get away with having like my finite life energy encapsulated in anything else. Now that said, I said it was savings, not investing. I think that a lot of these Bitcoin maxis, I think that they lack the perspective of people who weren't holding a lot of it in 2013 and 2014, where we've seen an incredible wave of monetization of the asset, where it absorbed a crazy amount of monetary premium from other asset classes. Bitcoin is now a top 7 or 8 asset in the world by market cap, so a tremendous amount of capital has flowed in, and people have protected their purchasing power and then some. So for a while, the killer app for Bitcoin has been a store of value. I don't think anybody can deny that. And I do think that as we're in this phase of monetization of the asset, where people are interacting with this thing in different ways, I still think humanity is having trouble wrapping their heads around what a majestic creation this is. It's like, it's going to take a long time for people to wake up to Bitcoin. I still think we're incredibly early. And so that said, it does seem rational to use it as an investment. And I think a lot of people, you have to understand how they look at the world. I know that I'm in a rabbit hole and I'm in my own world as being orange pilled. I think of the average normie out there, like a lot of people, like Microsoft stock is too volatile for them. Like Google stock is too volatile for them. And most people, they invest in equities and like it scares them. So they buy the S&P 500. And even when Trump is tweeting out a lot, it's too volatile for them. And to me, when I buy Bitcoin, I feel safe. Like when I hit the buy button and I transfer it to self-custody, I think, wow, like I feel safe. And for the average person, they would feel anything but. So as it relates to the hurdle rate, that's like kind of my baseline, how I view Bitcoin, if that makes sense. But at the end of the day, like I think that Bitcoin, if it's money and it continues to absorb monetary premium from other asset classes, it gains that capitalization. over time, people are going to use it as money, which means that they're going to invest it in enterprises that will provide value to shareholders. So it's really interesting. You see a lot of Bitcoin maxis that get mad at you for investing fiat money in equities. And these people, a lot of them can't even distinguish government currency and fiat currency. And then they can't even distinguish fiat currency and ownership in a corporation. Because like often equity is denominated in fiat, they have this like moral aversion to the idea of ownership in a corporation. So it's funny, like these people say Bitcoin is money, yet they're using 100% of their investing in Bitcoin, which I find kind of funny. It's like when Bitcoin is the base layer, when everything's denominated in that unit, are you going to get mad at other people for investing their Bitcoin? Like, do you think ownership in corporations disappears in a Bitcoinized world? I think that their view of the world is very flawed and illogical. I don't think that they're thinking their conclusions through all the way to the end. So that said, we're on a bridge between the fiat system and Bitcoin. Whether or not we're going to be in a hyper Bitcoinized world, you know, I don't know. I think pragmatically, I want to protect my own family's purchasing power. I want to secure my family's financial future. I want to improve my life. And so I view treasury companies like MSTR, Strive, Metaplanet as amazing investment opportunities because they are conducting a speculative attack on fiat currency, borrowing cheap fiat to buy Bitcoin, and finding cool ways to amplify those returns. So 100% of my portfolio is exposed to Bitcoin. I didn't have nothing else. It's 100% Bitcoin or the amplified expression in a treasury company. So, you know, if I'm not a true Bitcoiner after that, then I failed that purity test. So hopefully that answers your question, but that's how I kind of look at the situation.
No, you kind of nailed it. And well, I appreciate your answer, and all of that makes sense. I say nailed it because, again, I see a lot of my thesis in what you're saying there. The one thing that you mentioned there was just about the early adopters and a lot of the messaging. I don't want to paint a big brush, but a lot of messaging you do hear about Bitcoin being used as money. And again, money I put in quotes because the question we all ask, what is money? It's often coming from individuals that their cash balance of Bitcoin to fiat, fiat to Bitcoin, because of that purchasing power, because of that time, and because of that number go up, they've reached a point where they went from 1% or 0% to nearly 100%. And so on the monetization path, that I've always felt it doesn't really make sense for me to spend my Bitcoin. I don't have enough, or like I still have other things, real estate, cash, investments I have. So I want to get it all into Bitcoin. I want to be all exposed to Bitcoin, but at the same time, doing it in kind of a prudent manner, and these other kind of fiat wrappers. I look at Bitcoin wrapped in fiat as going on the offense versus on the defense. Bitcoin being my defense, right? And not wanting to operate in the fiat system, but acknowledging that it's here, it's real, it's what we are already in. We're moving to the Bitcoin system. And the Bitcoin system is up for debate of how that's going to look, right? I don't see it as an on-off switch of like, oh, we're on the Bitcoin standard, as much as like the global store of value. And you see how Jesse Myers has the straws kind of sucking up the capital in the different pools. I just kind of look at it as Bitcoin's not, or fiat's not here for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's here for fiat. Bitcoin is the mind virus, and it's going into those capital buckets more so than those capital buckets are coming after Bitcoin, right? And so I just, what's the, everyone bends the knee to Bitcoin. So, why wouldn't we want our capital markets to have to forcibly compete against the greatest asset that there's ever been? So,
yeah, I see this. If you don't mind, I want to say something about this, because I see this like kind of logical fallacy to me. It's from Bitcoiners all the time. I see this where anything that's not Bitcoin, if there's an asset that is denominated in fiat currency, most of the time, they view that as like a fiat instrument or like a fiat world type thing. And I think that association is totally bonkers. We're Bitcoiners, people. We can't forget that Bitcoin is repricing everything. And when you you pointed to the fact that we are on that monetization path where you're constantly asking, is this a current rational decision to trade an asset that is rapidly monetizing, which means that it's protecting purchasing power, not only in fiat, but in houses and horses and silver and goats, chickens, whatever you want to price it in. And my response to these people, these Puritans that pearl clutch over this, is always the same. Like, I don't believe for a second the guy that traded 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 Domino's pizzas made a rational decision in hindsight. That's the thing that I continually turn to. It's like, that wasn't a fiat instrument. Domino's pizza is not fiat, it's food. And that was a transaction in Bitcoin. So when it comes to the morality pearl clutching of investing in things and trading Bitcoin for them, and for the different asset classes, I think it's nonsensical. Bitcoin is money. You can invest Bitcoin. You're investing your purchasing power. I just don't think that that was a wise idea, if that makes sense.
I hear where you're coming from, and again, kind of one of the reasons why I gravitate to certain messaging, the True North community, yourself, many others, is I've always looked at Bitcoin as capital. I'm a real estate guy. It just always made sense. It's a fixed supply. There's a minor fee to transact. All of these, it seems much more capital in nature than kind of currency in nature. And now I'm saying currency. And the reason I'm saying currency is the use of the word money and currency. And there's always a debate, and everybody's really kind of up in arms with Saylor in his use of the words digital money. He's creating stretch and he's calling it digital money. And I was really quite happy Samson Mao made the question to him during the question and answer period, which I commend strategy. They just take questions and they don't ask for it in advance. And so sometimes they get questions that are a little bit like on the nose and the hot topic of X. And I think Samson did a great job just kind of like bringing Saylor to like, what is money? Bitcoiners, we all heard you preach Bitcoin is money. Now you're saying you're issuing and offering digital money. Well, I thought Bitcoin was digital money. And he didn't mention it, but in Prague, he talked about this, and he addressed how an Austrian would look at money and how a Keynesian would look at money. And so I always had trouble with the digital money concept. To be honest, like when he was saying it, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And I think again, his answer in both on Prague and in the podcast or in the quarterly earnings call was really quite poignant, where he was saying we are marketing to the large mass of people that are not Bitcoiners, and how they view money is X. It's a, as he called it, a currency pegged to fiat. So I guess I'm just kind of asking to you, because when I was a kid, I was in economics class. I forget what question I asked in high school, but my teacher said, "You're an Austrian." And I was like, "Yeah, like actually, Schmidt, I'm Austrian." And he goes, No, you're an Austrian economist. I was like, "What?" So I don't remember what I asked him, but something in something wasn't making sense on the whiteboard. And so Austrians think of money differently. So why? All right. The Bitcoin community seems to have a lot of people with that viewpoint, and now we're moving into and trying to get the rest of the world over, but they look at money differently. So how do we bridge that gap?
It's tough because money is such a radical thing to try to understand. It's a concept that humans have trouble wrapping their heads around. Most people go through life not even thinking philosophically what it is. And so when you look at the Bitcoin community, look what just happened with BIP 110. You had a sizable portion of the Bitcoin community. They claim that it is money, and that was the debate. Is it money, or is it a storage system? Is it a file system? And then you're seeing endless debates over semantics. And then, of course, because people are individuals with different subjective political preferences, because their values and morals their political preferences are derived from their philosophical, moral, ethical opinion. And so you're having a subjective opinion about what constitutes money from one side, and then the other side takes more of a laissez-faire view of things, and that's where the camp that I'm in, where Bitcoin just is. Bitcoin is a neutral, it seems like a monetary network, but people clearly can use it for different things. It's money, it's a network, it's computer code, it's so many different things in one. And so when you want to bridge the gap between what money is versus the people who are not orange pilled, there's a lot of pre-work that needs to be done, because Bitcoiners can't even agree what money is, which is a really fascinating thing. So then what do you do about it? If you have people in Bitcoin that have been reading Austrian economics and debating with each other about what money is, and this is a question that's never been solved by humanity, if we can't come to consensus about this, what do you then do? To me, it reverts back to markets are a PvP game, and humans are going to follow rational incentives. Regardless of what your opinion is about whether or not something is money, humans will allocate capital accordingly, regardless of what your own opinion is. And so that's my view on the process. And I do like Saylor's answer to it, because I just described to you why I hate the semantic disagreements. I hate them. I think it's like, wow, you're just telling me that you have a different value system than me. Like this is a very long-winded way of you telling me this. And Saylor is a pragmatist. He's saying, look, we package Bitcoin, we can securitize it, and whether or not you want to call it money or not, I almost don't even care. Is it useful to people? Is he securitizing something? Can it be a product that's useful to people? So, Saylor today, he retweeted a Solana protocol that's backed by STRC that pays you, it's probably tranching the risk. So maybe there's a senior tranche and a junior tranche where you get more of a yield, and he's, referring to it as digital money. To me, like, I'm not even interested in what people are calling it. I don't even care. To me, I'm like, well, I'm invested in MSTR. I'm invested in Bitcoin. This seems like it's going to bring more capital to the Bitcoin ecosystem. Therefore, I don't care if you're mad about the title of what you're calling it. So to answer your question, my friend, sorry for my long-winded rant, but I would say that when we ask how we bridge the gap to people who aren't in Bitcoin about what money is, I don't necessarily know that if you can for everybody, because there's not even consensus amongst Bitcoiners. So that's how I'd answer the question. We're on this weird monetization path where people can't even come to consensus. There's factions of the Bitcoin community that can't even justify their own philosophical presuppositions about government and what money is. I think that, it's a very tough problem to solve, and I don't know if it ever will be, but I do know that the most efficient and best market participants, they will acquire the most capital. And I'm going to place my casino chips based on what I believe will happen.
Well, yeah, a segue how you said that is just kind of, I look at MSTR and the Bitcoin Treasury companies as capital accumulation machines, right? Like you're kind of buying like the process of buying Bitcoin, right? Like they can do it better than me, and yeah. I have mine. And so I'm open to the idea of having something over in my fiat world that has powered by Bitcoin, and whose thesis and how they approach getting the Bitcoin resonates with me, as I've, again, from a real estate background, dealt a lot with credit, lending, debt, structuring products to make sure that you kind of weather the storm and you're able to service your debts and grow your equity. And I just see this with Bitcoin as being a far superior play than with real estate, without going down the rabbit hole too far. But, long duration asset, versus long duration liability, not having refinance risk, quite attractive cost of capital, relatively speaking, against the underlying asset that you're putting against. So it all kind of made sense to me with my real estate background. So, but kind of back to the strategy earnings call, and just kind of soon here wrapping things up. But it was quite clear. You often in your videos, you're putting us really big numbers, and so you're showing your math, and like you get into the options and the derivatives, and it gets really like, oh, what the, I get excited.
It's fun. It's fun. I want to get a 40x, man. It's fun.
Right. And so I guess my question to kind of, the options, etc. Matt Hogan asked a question with Saylor and talked about, selling options, covered call strategies, or, basically selling the volatility. And Saylor kind of definitively said, no, we're not adding product. We're going to go less product. We are trying to create less confusion, clearer signal. And to the point where, with Stretch, the goal, they've said that their goal is, the company's objective is to get back to par. They've made that kind of clear signal, and they don't want to take the benefit of the people that are doing the options tradings like yourself and the Bloombergs out there, terminals out there. They're selling the volatility already when they're ATMing, at the common equity in this case. So I guess the goal is to get back to par, and they seem to be trending and doing quite well from, I guess, a week and a half ago, or 3 weeks ago, when they were in the 80s and as low as low 70s. So they seem to be on their way. But how is this company going about returning to par? And he called his shot. He said it took about 70-ish days for them to get to par from when they launched. That's when they think is a reasonable time frame. I forget exactly what date, but we're kind of getting relatively close. For an instrument that a lot of people are saying, is sentiment driven, and how exactly does this financial engineer turn the dials, pull the levers, and what does he do to get that back to par?
Yeah, I think that I might be in the minority on STRC because I'm always crunching the math. I'm an MSTR investor. I've been very clear. I don't own any digital credit. I'm not in this for fiat income. I'm in this for growth gains that can outperform Bitcoin. But regardless, I do think that it's a great product for people who want income. If my 97-year-old grandma wants a 13% return or 12%, that's better than teaching her self-custody right now. I'll go ahead and say that. So let me clarify for anybody my position on this. But my minority opinion on STRC is that you see a lot of high time preference with investors in the Bitcoin community, which is weird because we call ourselves Bitcoiners, and then you see people freaking out over Stretch not being at par. And really, it's just the market saying, hey, we want to be compensated this effective yield for holding STRC. So the entire time of the drawdown, you had all these death spiral articles from people who are comparing it to Terra Luna being ridiculous. But the way I view it is it's just the market's pricing the risk differently. And obviously you had a leverage unwind because whenever there's going to be a low volatility instrument that's, giving those types of returns, you're probably going to expect leverage buildup. People are going to use their margin balances and, maybe max out some bank credit cards, etc. So that happened there. But I think that their response has been great. I think it's been very measured. It's very clear that they're not panicking, which is great because they understand that, Bitcoin going up, that's going to heal the capital structure over time. If a company has, let's just say Bitcoin goes back up to its all-time high, it goes up 100% from here, and Strategy has $120 billion of Bitcoin with, an annual dividend obligation of $1.7 billion. Is the market really going to demand like a 13.5% yield? Is that the risk if, your coverage increases that much? So clearly they're not panicking, which I love. I like the very measured buybacks. So what they're doing is fantastic. I don't think they ever had to do anything in particular. Not at all. As an MSTR investor, I've been very frank about, I almost don't care if it takes 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 3 months or 6 months to get back up to par, because a lot of people totally forget that when they are buying STRC, their senior claims are going up on their balance sheet 1-to-1 with their Bitcoin NAV. So, it's adding like latent gains for the common stock shareholder with the amplification that's already on the balance sheet. Like I've done the math on if Bitcoin goes up to 200K a year from now, or even all-time high a year from now. And if they just turn on the stretch ATM back to their year one issuance pace, it's like adds a couple dollars onto the stock price. That's just reality. They have so much amplification right now that, the question is, how long is it going to take Bitcoin to go up? There's a lot of indicators that make it seem like we're near a bottom, lots of on-chain indicators. And so you have to weigh that into the equation too. It's like, if Bitcoin going up will heal the capital structure, are you worried if Bitcoin's going to take another 4 years to go up? Then you probably wouldn't buy either of them. But if you think Bitcoin is likely to go back up over the next 1 to 2 years, then the risk profile of STRC and MSTR seem quite good right now, in my opinion. So I think that the company's responding really well, really measured. They're not like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, jumping the shark on any one particular thing. They're clearly demonstrating capital markets access, selling Bitcoin, using the reserve to pay off the debt. They've kind of done a little bit of everything, selling MSTR, selling stretch. They're really showing through this bear market they can pull any necessary lever. So I do think that's a huge win for them as we get through the bear market. But yeah, no notes to them. I think Strategy's doing a fantastic job. They've purchased, I don't know, net 170K Bitcoin in 2026 through a bear market. Phenomenal. No notes, really.
Yeah, that's kind of where I want to end on, but just to dovetail on what you were kind of saying, like stretch, and I agree with your thesis about stretch, right? I'm not necessarily looking for fiat income from my Bitcoin, but this product is the clear company's objective for their Bitcoin acquisition kind of engine. They have the MSTR common, but everything is kind of tied to the digital credit thesis now. So that's kind of like how I need to, rationalize and understand and why for this product, and who's going to need it, why are they going to want it. And so early stretch, and still is, predominantly retail. And for me, I don't think that's a whole bunch of dividend guys that just were waiting at the bit. As soon as Bitcoin had the dividend, they jumped in it. To me, stretch was largely predominantly Bitcoiners that wanted fiat income and went into it. And so institutions are coming. You saw the growth of how much that was there, but it's still kind of predominantly 2/3 retail. So for me, it's people that understand the Bitcoin thesis and understand the structure of the company. And I think that has a lot to do with why the market was demanding a higher, and is demanding a higher stretch rate, is because it's Bitcoiners looking at Bitcoin, looking at the 200-week moving average, looking at all the metrics and seeing, why shouldn't I just buy Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, like you say, kind of the market. But to kind of go back to just the last point, no notes. We're in this bear market. Bear markets are for the builders. And this company's core metrics for just like the last quarter, they increased holdings of Bitcoin by 11%. They lowered their debt by 18%. They increased their USD reserve by 12%, now more. This was at the end of quarter two. And they increased their core metric Bitcoin per share by 5%. How does a treasury company, one, but in general, how does the Bitcoin community build during bear markets? You see a lot of people during this Coldcard fiasco jump out Rob Hamilton, and they're starting to run with the red hat hacking to make, looking into the LLMs. You're going to see a lot of improvement in custodial, etc. My idea with pivoting from industry day to the podcast is Bitcoin bear markets are for the builders. So, thinking of strategy, thinking of the Bitcoin community as a whole right now, what is it about building in the Bitcoin bear market? Like how do you go about building in the Bitcoin bear market, and like how do you see that, what companies need to do in these times of extreme stress?
Yeah, it's tough to answer because I don't think there's like a one solution fits all depending on the different scales of these companies. My answer for strategy probably wouldn't be the same one for, some Bitcoin treasury company in South Korea with 34 Bitcoin. So it's it's definitely difficult. I would say that obviously, the ones that have failed, they failed to prepare for a worst case scenario. You saw a lot of these Bitcoin treasury companies leverage Bitcoin equities, might be a better way to describe it, but a lot of them going into Q4 of last year, they were set up for success in a way, because I think that everybody was expecting a big Q4 for Bitcoin, and a lot of them had a solid amount of leverage on the balance sheet. Sequans, for example, I remember they had like 50% of their balance sheet be in debt. And then Nakamoto was the same way. So a lot of these companies were buying relatively high throughout the year, and then the cycle high that every single Bitcoiner expected of 150 or 175 didn't materialize. And a lot of these companies did not prepare for that scenario to play out. So I just want to say, clearly, if you're going to think about building in the bear, you want to think about long-term success of, you got to plan for what's unexpected. You need to have a capital structure where you're not having debt coming due. You're eliminating maturity risk. Thankfully, Saylor had this amazing idea of digital credit perpetual preferreds, and you can pseudo lever your Bitcoin stack with dividends that never come due. And so, yeah, I would say like plan for the unexpected. And for those of you who aren't running a Bitcoin treasury company, but you're in the Bitcoin space, I'd say, just identify a market need as best you can. And maybe even if you are in the Bitcoin treasury space, identify a market need, value that you can provide to people. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And, when the hot money comes roaring back, that's when you get to reap the rewards. But unfortunately, everything's boring right now. And we just got to batten down the hatches and ride I don't want to say ride the waves of the bear market, because I don't think I've ever seen Bitcoin with this much volatility, but it's hardly anything. It's boring out there right now. So yeah, that's what I would say. Identify a market need, prepare for the unexpected. And those are my two best bits of advice.
I appreciate that. The only thing I disagree with you is boring. I don't know right now if I would classify the last couple of weeks as boring, but I maybe previous
specifically just the price.
Yeah,
in terms of
specific. Yeah.
In terms of the grander scheme, I've never been more invigorated to be a Bitcoiner. I don't know about you, Ben, but like, I think we're living in the most exciting time ever, but you need to get over this. Like, it's a trading thing. It's a cycle, bro. It's the price. Like, you need to, I think that me and you are on the same wavelength about things and why it's so exciting. So I'll let you say your piece on that, but I think that we're in agreement.
Yeah, no, well, I guess where I go with that is just it's kind of how early kind of we still are. I had a better tie-in, but ultimately, in the recent week here, so we had a situation with the BIP 110 and the soft fork and the hard fork, and I was watching kind of the different watch parties and partaking, and kind of tying into the Bitcoin bear market. At the depths of a bear market, we're having protocol, hard fork, soft fork decisions, etc. So, but I don't want to go down that conversation so to speak so as much, but what I found quite interesting is just kind of seeing how early we were with the amount of people that were taking that were viewing these things, these watch parties, the people on the BIP 110 side that I have a huge amount of respect for, people that look at it and have been here for previous soft forks or hard forks, and they were on the winning side, right? And so I don't want to kind of go down sides by any means, but ultimately what I found kind of comforting is just during the whole fiasco with Coldcard, the price took a hit and rebounded like immediately. And, the BIP 110 came out, I watched the chain, and it was really quite interesting the way the blocks came out. I won't try to recall it off the top of my head. I wrote it down, but it was
playing out in the most interesting way possible, wasn't
it? It really couldn't have. And then to have Ocean mine the latest block on the legacy chain. And anyway, so the whole point was Bitcoin just it ate it up, took it in stride, tick-tock, next block. And so in the bear market, it's for builders. You just keep moving forward the protocol every 10 minutes. And I found it very quite comforting just to see kind of how early we were in this space. So I would just like to kind of end that note, because if there's people getting into Bitcoin now, I don't know how many people watching this are just getting into it. I would think that a lot of your audience is quite down the rabbit hole, but I am trying to think of my messaging in this podcast, etc. When if somebody was just approaching this, if I'm fortunate enough to have someone that's just getting into Bitcoin, kind of clicking on this link. 5 years ago, when I got in Bitcoin, it was easy for me. Like, okay, I'm buying Bitcoin, I'm going to custody it, and now we have the digital equities, and we have the digital credit, etc. And I'd be super overwhelmed with everything that is there right now. So I guess I just want to emphasize how early people are. We are very early in this monetization process, so much so that we can't agree to base layer protocol changes. We can't agree about Bitcoin showing up in capital markets.
We never will. Either.
We never will.
Yeah. We will never reach consensus on these topics. That's
no.
Expecting that is an error.
Yeah, and I agree. So I just want to kind of end it now. I want to throw it over to you again. I want to thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for dealing with our power outage situation. And really, I couldn't be happier that happened, because, you know, what worse things can happen moving forward. So anyway, I'll throw it over to you. Anybody watching this is aware of Adam, so you know his Twitter's right there. You know where to find his content. So I'll just kind of throw it over to you, to your last word about Bitcoin, and you know, where do you see Bitcoin going, and where do you see you going with Bitcoin into the future? Like, how are you trying to stay one step ahead, because we are in the bear market? So where do you see Bitcoin and you going?
Yeah, it's a great question. I should have prepped for that one, but that's a good one. That's digging.
I didn't give you too much prep. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, that's true. No, it's all good, man. Yeah, I think that Bitcoin is gonna go the path of monetization. You know, obviously, I don't want to contradict myself earlier in the interview when I was talking about subjectivity, but if I think that we all come together and we try our best to be objective about the asset, the protocol, it has the best monetary properties of anything in the world. You line it up with gold, portability, divisibility, you know, this permissionless thing. It's a decentralized thing. Pretty much every single possible criteria you can think of, you square it up with anything else. I think that humanity will continue to adopt Bitcoin because humanity will, you know, they'll just follow rational incentives. So I think that that's what I'll be doing to stay ahead of what happens with Bitcoin. I think it's inevitable that it wins, but I don't want to get bogged down into too much philosophical disagreement about people's individual perception of a win condition. I have my own, and then, you know, people can make up their own. They can paint me as a villain because I don't see Bitcoin winning the same way that they do. But that's why I will always champion pragmatic Bitcoin adoption. I do have a bit of a utilitarian viewpoint where I'm like, look, if Saylor can make a digital credit product and improve the lives of millions of people that you couldn't have without Bitcoin, man, like, I'll take that any day. I'll count that as a win. I think, like, if people are better off because of something, how do you not chalk that up as a win? So I don't know. Then, of course, what is improving? You know, they're still trapped in fiat. This is an endless game. So what I'll tell you, Ben, is I will stay pragmatic. I will try not to get bogged down with the semantic gibberish that a lot of people do. But yeah, I think that Bitcoin's going to dominate regardless.
Bitcoin dominance. Saylor talked about that in the quarterly report there. So Adam, thank you very much. I'll just kind of end it again, bringing us back to the Vegas, and we were watching Saylor, and I asked more or less the same question. I was like, so what are you doing? Where are you going to go? And, you know, I hope I don't put you on the spot too much, but you kind of turned to me pretty, you know, I'm going to build a media empire. right? At Bitcoin Media Empire. And I just
I
wanted
said that.
yeah, you did. And I don't mean, that shouldn't be looked at as like anything other than inspirational. And I just want to say, like,
Thanks, man.
you spoke those words, and it's the better part of a year since then. And you're hitting an incredible frequency, cadence, pace, high value content, highly entertaining, highly engaging, and highly controversial amongst the Bitcoin world. And I, for one, love it. So,
Thanks, man.
Adam, thank you for being a part of this. I can't thank you enough. And till the next one. So we'll see you around.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.